Hi, my name is Dana Williamson, conservator and manager of the collection here at the Petersen Automotive Museum. And welcome to another of our virtual tours of our vault. Our vault deep beneath the museum here, presented by Haggerty. While the museum is closed, we're doing several virtual vault tours, museum tours, a lot of educational programs. So please look up on our website times, and for a small donation, there are so many things available, and we'd like you to partake in whatever you would like to. So without further ado, let's go and take a look at the vault. So now we're entering the vault area of the museum. I don't know how many of you have heard of the vault, but the vault is an exhibit space that is deep beneath the Petersen Automotive Museum and takes up a whole city block. I would say we have probably over 250 automobiles, motorcycles, trucks, cars down here on display. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you on a tour, a general tour, just so you can see what we have down here. And then when the museum does open, I would love for you to come in and take a guided tour where you can hear stories of all the cars, motorcycles, stories on history, owners, and just really interesting stories about the cars. So what I'm going to do right now is, as we take this tour, I'll touch on several things, several particular cars that might have some stories that I think you'll find interesting. So what we're going to do is, on my left here, we're going to start out with these two vehicles that you see. And I say vehicles because the one on the right, this black one right here, is actually a Studebaker. That's a 1904 Studebaker, of course, horse-drawn carriage. So this is not powered by itself. You would buy this, but you would need a horse. The horse would pull the wagon, and this is how it was up until around 1903. This is a doctor's coach. As you can see, you sit very high. You have a whip socket and rings for the horse harness. And right next to it, this maroon car here that you see is a 1903/4 Cadillac. So we're basically starting at the beginning. This is the beginning of the automobile, for the production automobile here in America. This particular Cadillac was the first model Cadillac produced, and it's not horse-drawn. So this is is powered by an internal combustion engine, and I'm going to walk around to the back here and just show you what it looked like. It's a big single-cylinder, open valve, chain-driven engine. So that is what powers this Cadillac. So in 1904, you could either have a car like this, say this Cadillac, internal combustion engine, or you could have the horse-drawn carriage. But this Cadillac in 1903 would cost you $750, which a lot of people didn't have at that time. It's a lot of money, $750. Now, as we walk along, on our left, you're going to see a lot of brass-era cars, and on my right, you're going to see a lot of motorcycles. And in our motorcycle collection, this is just a sampling of it. We have others in other parts of the museum. I have 4 Husqvarnas here, off-road bikes. 2 of them were Steve McQueen's. This was Steve McQueen's personal bike that he would ride through the desert. The one next to it is the bike that Steve rode in the movie On Any Sunday. The one in front of that is Bruce Brown's, who was the director of Any Sunday. That's the one he rode. And then the other Husky right here was also used in On Any Sunday. We have Vespas, we have scooters, we have some customs. We have a custom right here that belonged to Tim Allen. Tim Allen had this specially made for himself, rode it for a while, and then donated it to us here at the museum. In back of that, we have a Jordan, this maroon bike, which is actually a shaft drive. Shaft drive motorcycle rather than a belt or a chain. Other motorcycles, we have Honda number 1, which was the motocross champion. We have another bike of Steve McQueen's here, This is a 1929 Indian Chief. Steve actually had hundreds of motorcycles. We were told that this particular one was one that he rode quite a bit. Next to that, we have a 1932 Harley-Davidson highway patrol bike. Then we have a Bultaco. This Bultaco actually in the 70s won its class in the Tourist Trophy, as you know, the Isle of Man. In the back, we have a couple of motorcycles with sidecars. The one on the right is an early Harley-Davidson with sidecar, and the one on the left is a Norton with sidecar. As you notice, the sidecars are on opposite sides. Of course, the sidecar in America was on the right, and in Europe it was on the left. And this enclosed sidecar was very popular in Europe at the time because you were taxed on the number of wheels you had when you registered a vehicle. So this particular vehicle has 3 wheels, 2 on the motorcycle, 1 on the sidecar, and you could actually fit 2 people in the sidecar, 2 people on the motorcycle, so you could only pay taxes on 3 wheels to transport a family of 4, whereas if you had a car and you were had a family of 4, you'd pay taxes on 4 wheels. And the bike in front of that, this Harley was owned by the late Jessie Combs. This was her bike she used. She was Grand Marshal of Sturgis in 2019, and this is the bike. This was her bike. We have other customs, Indians. We do have the Moto Cam, which is a studio bike, a camera bike. So this was a motorcycle. It had a sled where 2 cameramen would sit, one with a handheld, one with a pedestal mount camera. The bike was was able to sync with the cameras, so they could sync with camera speeds and make it much easier in transition from scene to scene. This particular bike was used in several of Arnold Schwarzenegger's movies. Now, and then we have Chip Yates, electric motorcycles. So the electric motorcycle that you see right here, Chip Yates set a world record for the fastest electric motorcycle. That big pod in the back that you see there, that is that's where the batteries were kept. All right, looking across again, as I mentioned, as we went up the line, we saw the 1903 Cadillac, the 1904 Studebaker horse-drawn carriage. These are other, in front of us you'll see a couple of Model Ts and a Chevy. And you can see how, over the years, these are late teens, that automobile design changed. You started to get windshields, you started to get enclosed cabins, lower riding position, steering wheel on the left, chrome, brass started turning to nickel and chrome. They were thinking not only about transportation, but actually how the vehicle looked and creature comforts. And they started, it's really, as the automobile started to evolve, it became more and more about the driver and less about just transporting a person. Now, as we continue up the line, we're going to jump ahead several years, and you're going to see probably, pre-war luxury, what pre-war luxury looked like in America. We're talking, 30s into the, very early 40s, just before the war broke out. We have a couple of Packards. This Packard that you see, it looks like a creamsicle. It's orange and beige. This was actually the daily driver of a fan dancer back in the late 20s, early 30s. I don't know if any of you would recall the name Sally Rand, but she was very famous. Now, fan dancing at the time was basically, she was an exotic dancer. But what she would do is she would use fans in her routine and hide what she didn't want to show behind the feathered fans. Next to that, we have 2 front-wheel drive cars. These are America's first front-wheel drive cars, 1929 and 30. We have a Ruxton in a crazy paint scheme. And this was Ruxton's marketing department thinking that, people would want to buy their car, not just because it was front-wheel drive, but because it was very stylish with these crazy paint jobs. They had a car they called the Bumblebee that was painted black and yellow. They had a blue and lime green car. They had all these crazy schemes, but unfortunately, it really didn't help out the sales of the automobile. Which front-wheel drive car that was more successful was the one that we have next, and this is the Cord. But still, front-wheel drive at the time, back in 29 and 30, you know, hadn't been completely developed yet, and people didn't like the heavy steering. They did like the fact there was no transmission tunnel, or that that the cars were lower, but the steering was very heavy. It would kind of hop around corners, so it fell out of favor, and everything then became rear-wheel drive. But as you know, what goes around comes around, and then you know, in the future everything became front-wheel drive. Probably the most luxurious car in the 30s that you see here is the Duesenberg. So this is a 32 Duesenberg SJ, SJ meaning supercharged. So this was the luxury car of the time here in America. In order to buy this car, the way you bought a Duesenberg is you would buy a chassis and you would buy an engine from Duesenberg, and then you would take it to a coach builder, or have Duesenberg, of course, recommend one. The coach builder, or I would say the bodybuilder, whoever, the coach builder will build the body, the interior, the fenders, the accompaniments. That would all be done by the coach builder. This particular Duesenberg was coach built by Murphy, who was right here in Pasadena, California. Now, as I was saying, this would cost you probably around $10,000 to get the engine and the transmission back in the early 30s. Then you would have to pay for the coach work. So it was a very expensive car. And the expression doozy came from the Duesenberg, because the supercharged Duesenberg had a very distinct exhaust note. So if you heard that sound coming, you knew it had to be someone with a lot of money, someone that was very important in order to be driving a Duesenberg. Across from us, we have a European luxury car, 1927 Rolls-Royce, and this was the car of Fred Astaire. This was the car that his chauffeur would drive him to MGM Studios in every day, where he would dance with all of his partners, making movies, and I'm sure most of you are familiar with Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers, his career as an actor and a dancer. Very, very stately car, very, very beautiful. As you can see, the chauffeur's compartment was basically unprotected. You could roll up the windows, and there was a fabric top that stretched over it, but the passenger compartment, was very luxurious. It had silk upholstery. It would usually have flowers and wool carpeting. As a matter of fact, I'm going to open this door so you can just take a peek and see how beautiful the interior of the car is. And also on the back of this car is a Louis Vuitton trunk. Now, automobile trunks got their name because they started off as trunks. These would be trunks. They would be travel trunks, theatrical trunks, whatever you needed to carry your belongings in went into a trunk. The trunk was then attached to the back of the automobile, became the trunk, and hence now our trunks are an integral part of a car instead of something that's attached to the back. On our right-hand side, we have a Model A Woody. We have several Woodies here at the museum. This is a 32 Model A. They called it a depot hack. It's a wooden body. It would transport people. It was used to transport people, luggage, baggage, any kind of commodities to and from the train depot. The sides were fabric and they would roll up. And we have, like I said, several Woodies here at the museum. And the same thing, Ford was very smart when he started to build Woody wagons, which were very popular, in that he bought several forests. So he actually grew his own trees, supplied his own wood, so he never had to worry about a shortage or someone saying that they didn't want to sell them any wood. Now, as we go into the outer vault, as you notice, it's like a sea of cars here. We have classics, we have hot rods, we have race cars, customs. We're going to just take a walk down a couple of the lines here. We have a little white car on our left-hand side here. That is a Honda, a 64 Honda 600, and that is actually serial number 001. So that is the first Honda that was exported to the United States, first production Honda 600. It came to the United States, like I said, in the 60s, and what's interesting is that it's very small. So they took quite a chance on sending it in the late 60s to the United States, where what we had is we were starting to get our muscle cars, big V8s, well, like the cars across from us here. These are pre-60s, these are 50s, but we have a 57 Chevy convertible, Bel Air convertible, and next to that we have the Nomad. The Nomad was a station wagon version and of the Bel Air, and very, very popular. Very popular with surfers like myself. It was great. You could put surfboards in it. It was basically the precursor to the beach wagon. One car that I do want to show you that I kind of passed over a little bit here is this red. So this is a 1957 Caddy Biarritz Brougham, and at the time, in 1957, this was the most expensive car, American car that you could buy. It's beautiful. It's extremely long, but it's well appointed. Had air conditioning. It had power seats. It was just a beautiful car, but like I said, it was the most expensive car that you could buy at the time. Now as we go down the line, you'll see more brass era cars on our right. Excuse me, not brass era. We have one brass era car, but that looks like it has nickel trim. As you can see, the nickel was up until the late 20s, early 30s, and it became chrome. And as you got into the 30s, as we saw with those luxury cars, the cars became bigger, they became more comfortable for the driver, and they had a lot of appointments like mirrors and multiple lights, parking lights and headlights and chrome radiator shells and ornaments and things like that. In our center row here, we have several hot rods. Hot rods and custom rods. We have Foos, Coddington, Troy, Barris. We have a gasser, and a gasser is a drag car. It's this particular class of drag car. This is Hammer Time that we have. Next to it is we have a Corvair Corsa. Now the Corvair was a turbocharged car. So this is a car, a very early turbocharged car that you could buy from Chevy, and it was factory turbocharged. Chevy Custom next to that. We have a Ford Galaxy Custom. This is a twin turbo Ford Galaxy with a full roll cage. We have some more hot rods on our right. We have a 32 Ford powered by a Porsche 928 engine. Behind that, we have another 32 Ford. This yellow 32 Ford Phaeton was actually a car that Van Halen owned, and it was used in a couple of music videos. The most famous one, I think, was Hut for Teacher, where David Lee Roth is. It says, painted on the side, it says Hut for Teacher. He's driving it with many bikini-clad girls in the car. We have a 442 on my left, a restored car that is close to a 100-point car. Every nut and bolt is as it would have come out from the factory. We have a Kirkland, and this was a Bonneville car, and it was the first car to ever use a parachute at Bonneville. We have several Fords. We have the Gamma Roadster. We have these Fords here on the left-hand side are we have a Ranchero, 57 Ranchero, 57 Fairlane, 55 Fairlane, 57's convertible, 55. We have a nice little 32 Ford pickup, hot rod. This has air conditioning, power brakes, power steering, automatic transmission. This was done by Brizio, a great car. Some more customs. On our left is the Studebaker called Frankenstude. That custom has been on many, many covers. Let's see, more hot rods. Like I said, Foose and Coddingtons. And as you can see, when I said there we have over 250 cars, motorcycles, trucks, we probably have that plus. As we continue through, we're going to go up the center aisle. And in the center aisle, we have some heads of state cars. We have some Hollywood cars. And as you know, or if you didn't know, Mr. Petersen's claim to fame, he was a publisher, but the first magazine that he published was actually Hot Rod Magazine. And this is Mr. Petersen's daily driver. It's a twin turbo Bentley with a license plate Hot Rod. If you saw that license plate and you wondered why, Mr. Petersen started and owned Hot Rod Magazine. He owned Petersen Publication, of course. He had, at the height of his career, he had 42 publications, including Motor Trend, Field and Stream, Guns and Ammo, Carcraft, anything automotive and sports related. He also had Petersen Aviation. But Petersen Publishing also did a lot of self-help books. You probably read them. It's one point or another how to hot rod your small block Chevy, how to do 289 Ford, how to engine swap Volkswagens. Now the car that you're looking at right now is a Landaulet. It's a Mercedes Landaulet, which is a very rare model of Mercedes in which the passenger compartment is a convertible, the chauffeur's compartment is a hardtop. This particular car has little steps on the side. It looks a little beat up, and that is because it was Saddam Hussein's car. So this was the car that Saddam Hussein was driven around until the fall of the Shah. The car eventually made its way to Jordan. It was in disrepair. It was left in disrepair in Jordan, and Mr. Petersen was able to acquire it as a Landaulet. And then when he bought it, they realized that it was Saddam Hussein's. Across from that, we have a couple of Hollywood cars. We have a 1941 Cadillac that was Clark Gable had customized here in Los Angeles right from the dealer to give to his love, Carol Lombard, as a gift, birthday gift. Unfortunately, if you know the Carol Lombard story, she didn't get to drive it much because on her way back from selling war bonds, the plane crashed and she perished. And if you notice, there's a pink car next to that. This is a pink Lincoln Imperial. And this Lincoln Imperial was the daily driver of Jane Mansfield, the actress. And Jane Mansfield, of course, was killed in an automobile accident. This is not the car that she was killed in, but the one she was killed in was hit the back of a tractor trailer, and what happened was basically the car went underneath the back of the trailer when the trailer stopped suddenly. That's why now if you're ever following a tractor trailer and you see these bars underneath them, and usually they have safety tape on them or something, those are called Mansfield bars after Jane Mansfield, after her accident. Coming up, we have a red Delahaye that was the car of Elton John's. We have Grease Lightning from Grease. This is from the musical Grease, not the movie, but the musical toured the country with Olivia Newton-John, and this was the car that was built by Barris and used for that musical. Across from that, we have the Pope Mobile, which is actually a brand new Pope Mobile in that it was never used by the Pope. Unfortunately, the Vatican commissioned it from General Motors. It was built, but just as it was finished, the Swiss Guard said that they didn't want the Pope to ride in an unprotected automobile because there had been an attempt on his life. So all cars had to have, could not be convertibles. So the Pope blessed this car, got in the car, blessed the car, and now it resides here at the Petersen Museum. It's interesting, the seat that the Pope sits in, that will go up and down to make it easy for him to raise the seat so he can stand easily. Just lean back in the chair and then go down. When the doors open, General Motors put in these stairs that automatically come out. It was easy for the Pope to get in and out of the car. So unfortunately, a great Pope Mobile, but unusable. Switching back over to Hollywood cars, we have a 1800s manure spreader that's been converted into a hot rod with a mid-engine small block Chevy, Conestoga wagon top. That was a gift to Bob Hope from, that was commissioned by Bob Hope to give to John Wayne as a birthday gift. Pretty crazy gift, but definitely has the Western cowboy motif. And coming down the line, after that we have a custom Mustang. So this is a 1965 Ford Mustang, highly customized by George Barris for the movie Marriage on the Rocks with Frank Sinatra and Nancy Sinatra. They were both in that movie. It has a zebra fabric on the sides and zebra upholstery. It's a pretty wild car. Next to that, a 1948 Chevy Fleetmaster convertible, donated to us by Jack Nicholson. This particular car was used in the movie The Two Jakes, and I think also probably in Chinatown. We have Austin Powers' Shagmobile from the movie The Spy That Shagged Me. This was Austin Powers' time machine, where he would go back into the 60s and in the movie. And they used, and it was perfect, they used a VW because it was kind of that flower power 60s vibe to it. Next to that we have Magnum PI's Ferrari that he used in his series. And this is a car that he actually drove in the series. Hence the driver's seat was lowered, they repositioned the bottom cushion, and still he was so tall that he could never drive the car with the top on. So if you ever watch the series, you'll notice that no matter what, he's always driving that car without the top, which made perfect sense because it was shot in Hawaii, and the weather is pretty good most of the time in Hawaii. Back across, we have a Chaika, and this is a Russian car. This was commissioned by Nikita Khrushchev. He had two of these made, and this particular one he gave as a gift to Yuri Gagarin, who was the first man in space, the first Russian in space. And Yuri had the car for a short period of time, and he passed away, and then Khrushchev took it back in ownership for the Russian government. So that would be a Russian head of state car. I mean, it was convertible, the top would go down, and Russian dignitaries would sit there and wave. We have the Volkswagen from Little Miss Sunshine. And you can notice that there's the dent that they get in the movie is right there on the side. This This is the car driven in the movie. And that's what's great about a lot of the cars here in the museum. They are the original cars from either the movies, the TV shows, or used for the promotional purposes, but they are the actual cars that were used. Chrysler Imperial, a daily driver of Katharine Hepburn. Across from me we have a Hongji, another head of state car. So this Hongji was a Chinese car. Hongji means red flag. As you can see, it has two red flags on the front. This was for no particular dignitary or head of state in particular, but any important person that was visiting China, this is the car that they would ride in. It's also said that the Dalai Lama had ridden in this car several times. Continuing down the line, we have a Chrysler camera car that Chrysler made 3 of those. This particular one was given to Howard Hughes at RKO Studios. And up until this time, camera cars were just anything that the studio could find. The jury rig all these pipes and tubes on them to carry cameras. But this particular one that Chrysler built, convertible, air conditioning, full platform in the back, very easy to erect camera stands, and made a big difference in filming. Stutz Italia, we have a Mustang from Creed 2 movie. The yellow car right here, it's worth just letting you know, this was Elvis Presley's car. Elvis Presley had purchased this for his girlfriend Linda Thompson. This is the car that the stories go, and you've probably heard them, and it is true that Elvis shot 3 times, and there are some nicks in the steering wheel, the holes in the floorboard where the bullets passed through. Elvis had a temper. He didn't just shoot cars, he also shot televisions when he didn't like what he saw on television. 3-bore Hollywood cars. We have Herbie from Lindsay Lohan's Fully Loaded movie, and that is a NASCAR certified Herbie, meaning this car could run on a NASCAR oval, which it does in the movie, and it was clocked on the oval doing 136 miles an hour out of a 200 horsepower modified VW engine. Next to that, we have Thelma and Louise, Thunderbird, that was used in the movie. No mirror, and you can notice the mirrors are missing on the sides. That's where the camera mounts were. Of course, this is not the car they drove off the cliff, but it is the car that they used in a lot of the driving sequences in which they would be sitting in the car talking. Next to that, we have the Plymouth Fury Christine. As you know, Christine is the evil car. Christine kills people, and then when damaged, can morph herself back together. Across from Christine, we have an Imperial. This was the parade car of Eisenhower, also used by the astronauts for ticker tape parades. Richard Nixon actually also used this car. They made 3 of these. Chrysler did one for New York, one for Los Angeles, and one for Detroit, so that wherever the president was, or an astronaut or a parade, they would be able to use the car closest. This one was the Detroit car, and this is the only car that is in private hands. The other 2 cars still belong to the cities of Los Angeles and New York. Across from this, just looking over here, we have a Nash Healey used by Clark Kent in the Superman TV series. We have a Cheese Italia. We have a Fiat 8V Delahaye. As we go down the line, a Porsche Continental, several Porsches. We have the Mercedes all the way down the end, 600 that was used in the movie Witches of Eastwick, which also came to us from Jack Nicholson. Worth mentioning, this little Porsche Continental was only made for 1 year. It was actually they made the 356. When they exported it to the United States, Porsche decided to call it the Continental. When it landed here, of course, Ford said, "You can't do that. We own the name Continental." So this was only for 1 year in '54, and then it went back to the Porsche 356. Pedrosa, designed and built by the son of the Spanish king. We have, as we come down here further on the line, as you can see as we look over these cars, you see some Woodies over there. You see pickup truck custom, pickup truck hot rod. I mean, it's endless. We could go on and on and on and on, but we're trying to give you a quick sampling of what we have down here. And all of these cars have extended stories. I mean, you could stand here and talk about its history, its mechanics, the people that had it, the people that drove it, where they were used. Incredible amounts of information. Every car is unique. Coming through here, of course, I would say probably our crown jewel. This is a 1925 Rolls-Royce that was rebodied in 1932 as the round door Rolls-Royce, specifically to win shows in Europe, which it did. It won every single show that it had entered. As you can see, it's called the round door Rolls-Royce because it has round doors. It's an aerodynamic coupe. It resembles inside the cockpit of an aircraft in the 30s. It has a slanted grille, which most Rolls-Royce purists don't care for, but that was the way it was designed. It was coach built in Belgium by Jokier coach builders, and they had never done a car before, actually. This is the first car they ever did. They usually did lorries and trucks and commercial vehicles, and maybe that's why it's so huge. It's over 20 feet long, it weighs 8,000 pounds, but it retains the stock 100 horsepower engine, so it takes a while to get up to speed and then takes a while to stop, but it is a stunning, stunning car. It is really beautiful. Fin on the back, louvers, it has matching luggage in the back. Across from that, here we have another 8,000 pound car for a different reason. This was the armored car of FDR. After Pearl Harbor, the American government realized that FDR needed a armored car. So this is actually the first presidential armored car, armored limousine. This belonged to FDR. The glass in it is 1.8 inches thick. It has lead-lined doors. It has steel mesh surrounding the engine compartment so that it could still be cooled, but it could stop bullets if need be. And like I said, it weighs almost 8,000 pounds. It actually, when they first constructed it, it broke the rear end and the frame. They had to put a truck differential in it and beef up the frame. But it served its purpose and protected the president. Coming around here, we have some independents. We have a 1948 Tucker, as you know, with a helicopter engine in the back. And it's a rear engine car. And Preston Tucker was really all about safety. It has so many safety features in it to protect the occupants. And it has a Cyclops headlight that turns with the steering wheel. And then across from that, we have another independent, Davis, and it's a three-wheeler that you see green. It's a Davis divan, called divan because it has one seat, and that seat is a bench seat, and that seat was advertised as sitting 4 people across. That was built here, actually at Ventura Airport is where that was being built, but they ran into financial difficulties. Long story to that, but it was also a three-wheeler and not very stable. A Kaiser Darren with pocket doors, very unique feature. The doors would slide in and out of the front fenders. A good idea and not so good idea when the doors would get stuck. It would become a safety issue. But that is, I would say, probably America's first fiberglass car, because that's a fiberglass body that predates the Corvette. Going down the line, we're looking at time here, so we'll just touch on some cars here. On the left, we have Blind Faith, El Camino, mid-engine El Camino, powered by a Oldsmobile Toronado engine. It's right behind the front seat. And it's the first Hot Wheels car. Then we have some lowriders. Actually, this particular turquoise lowrider, this Chevy Impala belongs to Billy Gibbons of ZZ Top, and it's called Slam Pala because it slammed to the ground. A very famous lowrider, El Rey, and also El Rey's, I call it El Rey's son. We have several hot rods, customs, the Mathon. We have the Mathon V16, which is basically two small block Chevys Siamese together. And then as we go down, we're going to see Amber winners, America's Most Beautiful Hot Rods. We have winners from many different years. I think we have about 10 first place winners here. We have Sniper, which is a highly customized Viper, has the V10. We have Amber winners, customs, Cadillac lowrider, Huggy Bear. And next to that we have the Triton, which has probably been in every custom and hot rod magazine. It's a 59 El Camino and a 60 Cadillac that have been Siamese together with many, many custom features on it. Next to that we have a 1951 Hudson Wasp. That was Steve McQueen's daily driver. That's what Steve drove when he didn't want anyone to know that Steve McQueen was around and driving. Let's see. We have the first Amber winner. This is the Niekamp Roadster from the first competition was in 1951, and this is the car that won the Amber competition in 1951. Just looking back here, we have a couple of important, we have two Hanson Cobras. This is the Hanson brothers. They wanted to go into the car manufacturing business. They designed and built these cars themselves. These are the two prototypes that they built. There was one other car. They look alike, but they had they're similar, but they had differences to them. Unfortunately, they look really, I think, too much like Corvettes. They do use Corvette windshields, and it just they just couldn't get the funding and were able to go into production. We have two dragsters here. We have Flathead Jack's fastest flathead in the world, and that has two flathead Fords Siamese together. The crank was machined in one piece, then cut in half, and then splined together. And then over here behind me, we have John Force's funny car. This was the last Ford Mustang funny car that John Force raced. After this, he went over to Chevy, so he's now racing Chevys, and his daughters also race and are very successful. And he donated this to us, which we're very thankful for. It's an incredible car. I mean, this is, they're going from a standing stop to the end of a quarter of a mile, and they're way over 300 miles an hour. So you can just imagine, you get in there, you turn the thing on, and hold on for dear life. Couple more customs on our left. The yellow one is the Illuma Coupe, which is actually a Mitsubishi. The one on the left, the red one, is actually a Lexus LS400. We'll pass this truck that we're passing here is what they call a wood burner. During the Second World War in Europe, the farmers and merchants couldn't get their goods to market, so inventors and entrepreneurs found out that superheated charcoal gas was actually combustible with no special equipment. So this particular truck has a furnace that sticks up in the back where you would burn wood. You would start the truck on gasoline. You would burn wood, which gives off charcoal gas. When the charcoal gas got to the right temperature, it would be injected right into the intake manifold. Like I said, no special equipment required. You would wean off your gasoline and turn on your charcoal gas, and they were able to get their goods to market. and just run on charcoal gas. Of course, the efficiency was probably 30% that of gasoline. We have the Melco Gasser funny car. We have the a 57 Sedco, which Chevy drag car that you could buy from Chevy dealers. We have sampling of race cars here on the left. We're still going up the row. You can see Golden Star, you can see Orange Twist, Root Beer, Alien, XR6, all of Amber winners. We have a Renault Alpine, that an 1800cc. This particular car was one of the factory team cars that won the first World Rally Championship in I think it was 72, and which led to a very successful racing run for Renault and Alpine. We have Eddie Lawson's BMW. We have Matt Kenseth's winning Winston Cup car. He actually won the Cup with this car. And having done that, he only won one race and he was able to win the Cup. So there was a rule change right after he won the Cup, and now you hear the chase for the Cup, the run for the Cup. That's because of the rule changes. And we have a couple of gold cars. We have a gold DeLorean, which is actually, there were 3 of these made, commissioned by American Express when they came out with the gold card. They are 24 karat gold plated DeLoreans. This particular one belonged to a banker in Texas who never drove it. Mr. Petersen obtained the car, and it's never been driven. It has 5 miles on it just from pushing. There's no way you could repair it. The bodywork, it would scratch, and once something happened to the gold finish, you would not be able to repair it unless you took it to a jewelry store, I guess. 1 millionth Mustang. They built 50 1 millionth Mustangs, all painted gold, and you could not buy these, but you could win them in a lottery. You would go into a Ford dealer, and you would enter a contest. And next to the Mustang here, we have a 1964 Dodge Coronet. So this was a Dodge race car, actually.
Try that one more time.
Okay.
And go.
And right next to the gold Mustang, we have a 1964 Dodge Polara. Excuse me.
Let's try it again.
Yeah.
Set and go.
And right next to the gold Mustang, we have a 1964 Dodge Coronet. So this is a race car you could buy right off the dealer floor. It's powered by a 426 Hemi. It has all the deletes, and by deletes I mean no wheel covers, no radio, no air conditioning. Anything that would rob power and add weight to the car was deleted. You could buy it that way so that you could drive right from the dealer to the racetrack. Across from that we have, I would say, another crown jewel of ours. It's a Ghia Cadillac. So this 1954 Ghia Cadillac was one of 2 cars. So Cadillac sent their engine and chassis to Italy, to Ghia. Ghia built this beautiful body, and it was shown at the Paris Auto Show. Never went into production, just 2 of them. This one, though, was purchased. It was purchased by the richest man in the world at the time, the Ali Khan, given to his wife at the time, Rita Hayworth, the actress, dancer, the redhead. And he gave it to her as a gift, hoping that it would improve the relationship in their marriage. It didn't, but she kept it, and it was her daily driver. And then behind that is another Ghia. This is a Plymouth Ghia. So as you can see, some similarities in the bodies, but auto manufacturers, American auto manufacturers would do that. They would send their chassis and drivetrains to Europe, to different coach builders, to have them build a concept car, and most of them, we actually call them dream cars also. These were cars that were supposed to have a futuristic look to them for the time, and but the Italian styling is drop dead gorgeous. As we come up the line, we have the XR, we have a Nash Healey, but this is the coupe version. We have a Continental, 56 Continental, and earlier in the tour I told you that the Caddy Biarritz of 57 was the most expensive car in America that you could buy. Well, that 56 Continental was the most expensive car that you could buy in 56. And Cadillac didn't like that. That's why they came out with the Biarritz. That particular car was purchased in 56. And when you purchased the cars, they came completely loaded. You couldn't add anything to them at all. No add-ons, as is, but it was fully loaded. And coming into the inner vault, we have a lot of sports and supercars. On my right-hand side, we have 3 carbon fiber McLarens. We have the MSO on the right. In the middle, we have the McLaren P1. And to the left of the P1, we have the brand new McLaren Senna, of course named after the famous F1 driver Ayrton Senna. Next to those, we have an older supercar, which is a Jaguar XJ220, powered by a twin-turbo V6. Unfortunately, that was the car that was supposed to come out with a V12, supposed to do 220. They couldn't do it. The V12 didn't work in there. Engineering-wise, they ended up putting a twin-turbo V6, and it only obtained, I think, 217 miles an hour top speed. So it fell short of the 220, which angered a lot of people. On our left over here, we have a Porsche 928. Next to that, a Ferrari Barchetta. But this little orange Mazda here is actually a solid clay car. Excuse me. I was thinking of something else. This is this was the prototype. So this is a fiberglass body car. And it doesn't have doors. It doesn't really have an interior. It looks like it's the concept. So this would be what they had in the design studio, and all the heads of Mazda could look at the car and decide whether they liked it or not. It was at this point that they could make any style changes before they went into full production. Next to that, we have the 55 Thunderbird, and of course, favorite of mine, we have the 1952 Ferrari Barchetta. This is an all-original car, original paint, original interior. It was built specifically for Henry Ford by Enzo Ferrari. Next to that, we have a 59 Corvette Scaglietti. There were 3 Corvette Scagliettis made. This is one of the 3. We have a Jaguar SS100. And then my all-time favorite in the whole museum, we have the 56/57 Jaguar XKSS, a road version of the D-Type Jaguar owned by Steve McQueen, 56 Corvette, second generation Ford 427. And then in the corner, the red car is a Porsche 901, which is only probably one of a handful that exists still in the world today. That was the precursor to the 911. Peugeot made Porsche stop calling it a 901 before it went into full production. All the models that had been produced were supposed to have been destroyed. This is one of the ones that has survived. So it went, this is 64 901. Right after that, it went to the 911. In the middle here, we have a 1961 Jaguar outside latch E-type coupe, one of only 20 actually that were built. Beautiful, beautiful car. The E-type coupes, I think, are some of the most beautiful cars. The 2 in the middle are Old Yellers. They were built by Max Balchowski. He built about 10 of them, Mark 1 through Mark 10. The one here in front is a Mark 3. The one in the back is a Mark 9. Both powered by Buick Nailheads. They're called Old Yellers after the Disney movie Old Yeller. Old Yeller was about a dog, a junkyard dog. Max used to build these cars out of junkyard parts. He wouldn't buy new parts. Just the engines. Buick would give him the engines. People say that he was probably the skunk works for Buick, and he would do work on the engines. He would do research for them, report back to them. He would never quote horsepower figures. He always said he could get more speed out of a Buick engine than anyone else. Now behind us we have on our right, we have the maroon car on the far right is one of two of the first Ferraris produced, 1947. It was the first Ferrari. We believe, we're hoping to get it validated by Ferrari Classic in Modena. They've been over, inspected the car. They're doing the research. We believe it's the first production Ferrari, the first Ferrari ever to wear the Prancing Horse badge. There were two built. We believe this is the first one of those. Next to that is the Dodge Viper. Dodge Viper was powered by the V10. You probably saw Sniper before the Custom that I said was a V10. This is the actual car Viper. This is one of 6 pre-production models. If you want, you know what, several of these cars, if you want to get more information on these cars, you can go onto our website and look up Driving with Dana. I've driven several of these cars, and in driving them I talk about the car, performance figures, and you can actually see the cars on the road. We have the Ferrari 70th anniversary. We have the 456 Challenge car painted by Tyler. Tyler's a famous artist that hangs from a trapeze and drops paint. That's how he painted that. And then we have the 3rd generation GTO. This is the 599, Ferrari 599 GTO. Of course, they made the 250 GTO, 288, and the 599. In front of me, we have 2 race cars from the 20s. The one on the left raced, sister car raced Le Mans, and the Indy 500, it's a 1929 DuPont. And the one on the right is a Mercedes. And this Mercedes is a Targa Florio. They made 3 of these. It was made specifically for the Targa Florio race in Italy. And it is powered by a, of course it's a Mercedes before Mercedes was Mercedes-Benz but the engine in it is a Daimler. At the time, Daimler was building aircraft engines, and that's the only engine that Mercedes thought would work for an endurance race because it could run all day long at maximum torque and horsepower at only 1,800 RPM. On our right, we have the new generation of Ford GT, powered by the EcoBoost twin-turbo V6. Next to that, we have the 2006 Ford GT. And this particular, it was built for the 100th anniversary of Ford, and it pays homage to the Ford GT40. We're lucky enough on the 3rd floor of the museum here to have a 1967 GT40, one of only 4 road versions that has left-hand drive. Across from me here, we have a Regal brass era car. And we have probably America's first supercar. This is a 1913 Mercer, built here in the States, in Delaware. This particular car, when it was stripped down, was said to go anywhere between 85 and 100 miles an hour back in 1913. I've driven this car. It's a handful, and I say that I love it. But when you get to speed, you have to maintain fuel pressure and oil pressure by hand pumps. Has no front wheel brakes. In order to get brake pressure, you have to use the foot pedal and the handbrake. It has built-in anti-theft device, and that is, as I say, it's a crank start. It takes a good 15-20 minutes to get that started. But what an incredible car for 1913. That about does it for this part of the vault. We're going to end by going into the shop. We have a shop here where we have technicians that maintain, preserve, do some restoration of the collection. And through we've been very lucky through the generosity of Tom and Sharon Malloy. who have funded a project to renovate our shop area so it's worthy of the world's greatest automotive museum, with new cabinets, polished floors, lifts. We're going to go in here now and just take a quick look around before we leave the vault. And as you can see on our left-hand side, we have the first Indy car, one of the first Indy cars for the first year after the Second World War, when Indy racing picked back up again. That's a 1946 Curtis Offenhauser. It is a Frank Curtis design specifically for the Indy 500, powered by an Offenhauser supercharged engine. Not a very safe car. The fuel tank wraps all around you. Drive shaft is right there. You're pretty exposed. So in the shop area, we have, like I said, we have the technicians that maintain the automobiles, but it's also, you never know what's going to be in here. It's constantly changing. We have cars coming in, cars going out, cars being staged for future exhibits. As you can see, we have a midget racer. We have a Tesla S. We have a 2016 911 RSR. We have a couple of Indy cars on our right. AJ Foyt Jr.'s Coyote. We have Robbie Gordon's All-American Racing IndyCar. We have Bobby Rahal's Last Ride. This is the last car that Bobby Rahal drove in his driving career before he switched over to team management and team ownership. We're very lucky also to have Bobby Rahal as one of our board members. We have Lola T70. We have a American Eagle Toyota GTP car. We have a Denny Hume bodied McLaren M8DE. We have Jack Brabham's first race car. This is the car that he raced himself, the first car that he raced, the first car that he designed before going on to being a 3-time Formula One world champion and champion car designer and racer. Cale Yarborough's Hardy's car. We have a very tall car. This is a 1910 Daimler. This is the royal coach used by King George V. Next to that, we have a Detroit Electric in all original state. But this is what an electric car would look like in 1914. And as you can see, the interior of the car is almost like a parlor. It would be like your living room, what you would sit in. It was designed specifically, well, they were looking at women when they were designing something like this because it had the headroom where a woman could sit up and wear her big hat. It was an electric car, so she didn't have to try to hand crank the car. And it was very, very comfortable. Unfortunately, it had a short range, so you were the only one with a charger, and if you went too far, you wouldn't be able to get home. On the right-hand side, we have four race cars from the Bruce Meyer collection. Bruce is also one of our board members and a Beverly Hills collector, and we had an exhibit on his cars called Winning Numbers. They were all winning cars, whether they were the first or the fastest. The yellow Greer black Prudhomme dragster was probably one of the most winning dragsters of the 1960s, driven by, as you know, Don Prudhomme, known as the Snake. The first Shelby Cobra, number 1. There were only 2. Of course, first one was the prototype, and this was the first production Cobra. Next to that is a Ferrari 250 GT short wheelbase, lightweight, aluminum factory race car. This placed first in class in the 1961 Le Mans and 3rd overall. Next to that is 65 Bizzarini, which also placed first in class in the 65 Le Mans. Next to that is 59 Scimitar, one of only 3 Scimitars that were built, each one with a different body style based on Chrysler New Yorker. And as we go back toward the shop again, we have a 3-wheel truckster. We have some projects here. Back there in the distance is a Packard sports car powered by a V12 Packard. In front of that is a what we see here in gray is a Corvette. This is a 1963 Corvette Resto Mod that'll be finished. This is powered by an LS motor, all racing suspension, but with the appearance of an original 63 split window. Then we have, actually, this is my daily driver, or was up until I'm doing an engine rebuild and a transmission rebuild. This is called Tomb Raider. It's a 1973 Land Rover Series 3 88-inch wheelbase. It's been, I spent time in South Australia with a documentary film company. Like I said, it's been on Jay Leno. It's been all over the world. It's my daily driver. Fantastic car, I love it. And as we come back into the middle, I just want to say that I want to thank you all for joining me today on this tour. And through the weeks, we'll have several tours all week long. Just please tune into our website, get the times, and any donation that you do make goes to help us, through the time when we're closed here at the museum. We're a nonprofit, and we also have educational programs, so they're not just vault tours. We also have programs that will tell you how to build things, how things work, why things work. Really a lot of great stuff. So on that note, I want to say goodbye. I want to say thank you for joining me, and be healthy and be safe. Thank you.